Thank you for being here, Mike.
Thank you, Tadra. Good to see you again as always. And thank you everybody for joining us today. I have been tasked and have accepted the challenge of trying to talk a little bit about Social Security disability and SSI benefits. So let me start off kind of briefly introducing myself. As Tadra indicated, I am board certified. This is what I do to support my family and keep a roof over our head. But beyond that, it is also something that I really do enjoy. I put a lot of pride, a lot of effort into it. Social Security disability takes up about 95% of my practice. I also do a little bit of workers' compensation benefits, but at this point, I'm 16 years in, and that's kind of the two areas where I'm limiting myself to. I'm here in Winston-Salem, middle part of the state, but I handle cases all over the state of North Carolina. I've handled cases up and down the East Coast. I have clients in Maine and Florida and Ohio. But again, the bulk of my practice is right here in North Carolina. What I want folks to do, if they can, while I'm kind of finishing up this introduction part, if you can, grab a piece of paper and a pencil. I'm not asking you to take notes, but we may hit on a topic that you might want to scribble down a few notes on. Conversely, I will give out my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. I do have to give some sort of blanket disclaimer. This is the lawyer coming out of me. Basically, something along the lines of, this is not specific legal advice. This is not advice given to your case specifically. This is just general information, and we are not forming any sort of attorney-client privilege by participating in this Zoom conference. Nonetheless, if you need anything, you're welcome to reach out to me. I do want to say thank you to Disability Rights NC. They do such a wonderful job. You start to, when an organization has been around for as long as they have been and has done some amazing things across the state of North Carolina, you start to almost take them for granted. They haven't always been here. Funding isn't always guaranteed. Money is tight. So this is my one little spiel, and they did not ask me to do this, but if you ever are in the need or want to donate, even if it's $5, please feel free to reach out to Disability Rights NC or another organization who is helping disabled folks across the state of North Carolina. If you've got that piece of paper, I'm gonna give you my information. I'll do it again at the end, so don't worry. We can probably even put it in the chat. But my email is the letter M, Shay, S-H-A-Y, law, L-A-W, at outlook.com. So that's mshaylaw at outlook.com. All right, so when we talked about this a month ago, we initially had a plan to bring in an audience that was primarily folks who are getting disability benefits, getting SSI benefits, getting Title II benefits, but also engaged in some sort of maybe part-time work, maybe gig work, maybe the artistic community, the music community. Here in Winston-Salem, we have a huge art population. And I have had many clients over the years who are artists or were artists. I've had clients who have gotten disability benefits and have continued to work in some capacity. So that was the beginning. And that's still going to be a big focus of what we're doing here. But it's my understanding that I think we have close to 100 people on this call, and not everybody is an artist receiving disability benefits. We have folks from a variety of backgrounds. We have folks who might not be getting disability benefits at all. We also have folks who, to my understanding, are employed by government agencies, maybe the Department of Health and Human Services. We may even have a few Social Security employees on the call. All are welcome. And I'm glad that we can have this kind of discussion, because this is an important topic and something that if you go online and search, you can quickly get confused. I'm board certified. I've done this for 16 years. I had to prepare for this because a lot of these topics are very unclear. What I want to talk about, I was talking with my son about his schoolwork last night. I have an 8-year-old who's in 3rd grade, and he was wanting to jump ahead in math, and he was wanting to go ahead and get into this division problem. But I had seen the very simple stuff that he was supposed to be doing earlier today or yesterday at school, and he got 8 out of 10 correct. And while he was wanting to jump ahead and kind of get to the pinnacle of what he thinks math is, I was talking about with these building blocks and how it was important. We got to set the standard. We got to get this base. We have to have these building blocks before we can get to where we need to be. So my goal at some point sooner than later with y'all is to talk about disability benefits and ways you can maximize, whether it's through work or other ways. I want to get there, but let's start off briefly talking about what is Social Security disability, what is SSI. At the end, we will have time for questions. So feel free to put them in the chat, and to the extent we can get to them, as long as they're not too specific to your situation, we can hopefully handle some questions. Another reason why I asked you to get that pen and piece of paper, because we're going to do a math problem, right? We're going to actually work through a hypothetical situation of somebody who is getting disability, who has a little bit of income, and see how it might affect them at the end of the month. All right. So Social Security disability, the standard is pretty vague, but when you peel all the kind of layers back, it boils down to, is there an individual who has a combination of medical impairments or related medical limitations, and that makes it to the point where they are unable to hold down gainful employment, consistent work. That's what Social Security disability is looking at by and large. For adults, kids is a different situation, but for adults, can you work or not because of your medical impairments? The process is frustrating, and I suspect we have folks on this Zoom call right now who have gone through a disability application process at some point in their life. Maybe you're one of the ones that got approved right off the bat. You didn't have to fight with Social Security. You didn't have to go get some fancy lawyer off a billboard. That's happening, unfortunately, less and less, particularly over the past 10 years or so. Most everybody who's applying for Social Security disability is getting denied. When you get denied, you got to call me, you got to call some lawyer, and you got to start this appeal process. And it's frustrating, and it takes forever. And your file just kind of sits in places that it doesn't need to be sitting. And the bureaucracy of Social Security tends to start rubber stamping denials without really considering you as a person. And think about what I'm saying here. Looking at you as a person, unfortunately, for most folks who go through the Social Security process, you're a number, you're a stack of medical records. You're not a real person with real life problems. And part of what you have to do during the appeal process to get approved for disability is you have to show them, hey, I'm more than these medical records. This is how my problems affect me day in, day out. Every single day of my life, I'm having these problems. They affect me at home. They affect my ability to go out and hold down a job. If you can do that, then whether on your own or with the help of a lawyer, maybe you've gone through successfully and you've gone to a hearing even, and you had some judge you've never seen staring at you, and your lawyer's asking questions and the judge is asking questions, and you're treating it almost like a counseling session. I mean, you're talking about life as best you can. You're nervous, your heart's beating, you're anxious, you didn't sleep at all for the past 2 days. And here you are, you know, it's all on the line. That's the disability process. And it's, frankly, my job shouldn't exist. I should be doing something else. You shouldn't need a lawyer to go through and prove that you have these medical problems, that you have these limitations, but that's our system. That's the way it's set up. The medical standard is the same for everybody. And what I mean by that, for any adult, regardless of your work history, regardless of your education, regardless of your age, I mean, the standard is still the standard. It boils down to whether or not you can work. I want to spend a quick second talking about the two different types of disability. And then I'm going to try, without being too technical, to really address one type of disability with a few rules, and then another type of disability. And I'm going to use these interchangeably. There's a Title II disability, which is what most folks think of. It is called Social Security disability. There's another type called Title 16 Supplemental Security Income. That's most people call SSI. So for what we're going to be doing, Ms. Martin, we're going to talk about disability, and we're going to talk about SSI. And I'm going to try, when it's important, I'm going to try to point out the differences, because there might be somebody on this call who has no clue what type of benefits they're getting. They know they get some Social Security in once a month. There may be other folks who know for a fact, well, I'm getting Title II, I'm getting disability based on what I paid into the system. Other folks might say, well, no, I've never worked in my life, so I'm getting SSI. So let's real quick try to kind of straighten some of that out. Title II disability, generally speaking, is for folks who have worked a certain amount of time and paid a certain amount of, not necessarily money, but a certain amount of quarters into the system. The general rule, and this changes for folks who are younger and in their 20s, but the general rule is if you've worked 10 years, which is 40 quarters, then you can draw Title II disability. So every check that you've ever earned, they've taken money out, right? You didn't give it to them. They took money out of your check under the theory that they're going to set it aside for you and it'll be there later. So if we're lucky enough to have worked and paid into the system and you're approved for disability, then there's just a simple algorithm based on how much you've paid in and how much you've worked. And that's what you kind of get back in return. Unfortunately, there are a lot of folks who either haven't paid enough in for whatever reason, or they're younger, or they've had disabilities from childhood into adulthood where work just hadn't been an option. The other program that we're talking about today is called SSI. SSI has a couple little tricks to it. And we're going to start off real quick with an SSI trick that I see all the time. This is a pitfall. They look at your resources. They look at your household. For SSI, you can't have more than a couple $1,000s in a bank account. If you're married, the number is 3,000. This is for SSI only, not disability. This is just for SSI benefits. They look at your housing situation. Are you living with somebody rent-free? If you are, they're going to knock your check down by 1/3. If I'm getting SSI benefits and I'm living at my sister's house, sleeping on her couch, she's, but for the grace of God, she's letting me stay there. They're going to ding me. They're going to knock my monthly benefit down 1/3. We'll talk about kind of an exception to that if we have time. SSI folks are also subject to things like other resources. Me, as an SSI recipient, I can own my house, I can own my dog, I can own one car, I can own the stuff in my house. But if I have any other piece of land, if I have a second vehicle, a third vehicle, no matter how, even if it doesn't run, if I have other things, they will use that against me to kick me off of SSI until I fix it, until I figure it out. I'm allowed certain things, but I can't have too much. And think about that. I mean, think about how unfair that is. All our life we've been taught, save, set aside, budget, right? Do what you need to do to save for a rainy day. But with the SSI program, you get penalized if you try to do that and you are outside of your allowable resources. That's a topic in and of itself. I mean, that's something we can spend 2 hours on. I've gone to legal education seminars that are just about SSI resources and had folks from all over the country opine about strategizing and what to do with that. We can't do that on this Zoom call. I just want to highlight the fact that if you are an SSI recipient, they scrutinize you unnecessarily hard. They're going to look at your household. They're going to look at your assets, your income, your resources. So when we're talking about disability in work, which is kind of what I want to hopefully focus on for the next, however long we have, there's a general rule. And Ms. Martin over at Disability Rights can tell you when you go through law school, there's always a general rule. And that's the rule that they teach you. But then there's like 1,000 different exceptions to that rule. And that's just where lawyers come into play. The general rule for work, when you're talking about Social Security disability, is that if in 2021, if you are earning more than $1,310 a month, then you're engaged in what's called substantial gainful activity. And that is a term of art that Social Security has come up with. The acronym is SGA. So if you're making a little over $1,300, you are gainfully employed for Social Security disability purposes. And why is that important? Well, I mean, that's it. That's the crux of what Social Security is looking at. Because if you're holding yourself out as, I'm applying for disability, but you're working and earning $1,300, Social Security is going to say, If you've already been approved for disability, you're getting your monthly check. You successfully went through the process. And then Social Security catches wind of you earning $1,300 a month. They're gonna have a problem with that. Now, keep in mind, this is the general rule, and we're going to work off of this general rule. I'm not going to go into the details. There's manuals. There's something that us disability lawyers use called POMS. I mean, it's a manuscript that we're talking a foot of just pages and pages and pages of information about what we're trying to cover here. And I don't expect you, nor do I want to go into all these details, but I want you to know that there are some exceptions to work. You can work. Let me say that again. You can work and get disability benefits. You can work and get SSI benefits. All right, let that sink in. That's our general rule. That's what we're going to move forward on. If anything, when you walk away from this, I want you to remember that you have to report anything to Social Security. And that's always been, I have clients right now that I know have an issue with reporting things to Social Security. And if I'm being honest, they have an issue with reporting things to me. I would like for them to be a little more upfront with me about certain things, work stuff in particular. You have to report. Let me tell you what you have to report. Earnings, yes. Any money you got coming in, you need to report it. Income. But it goes beyond that. You got to report when your address changes, if you get married, if you get divorced, if you get a new bank account. I mean, think about that. Everybody on this call who's getting Social Security or SSI benefits it's going directly into your bank account, isn't it? So if that changes, we got to let Social Security know. If your name changes, if you have kids, if you're convicted of a crime, if you go to jail, if you get money from a pension, all of this stuff. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All of this stuff needs to be reported to Social Security. And let's talk about that. I shouldn't have to do this, but let's talk about the act of contacting Social Security and keeping them in the loop. They hold you to a very high standard, an unfair standard. You have to report, but sometimes that's not even enough. I've had clients, and I bet Tadra, when she was at Legal Aid of North Carolina, we will have a client that comes in and says, I told them I was working. It was a couple $100 here, couple $100 there. I gave them my pay stubs. They kept paying me. What am I supposed to do? I'm not going to turn down money. I got bills. I got things I got to do. Social Security, by and large, will still hold that against you. So you have to report and then report some more and then probably report a third time. During COVID, which is when this is being filmed, obviously, if anybody's watching it recorded later, this is September of 2021, every Social Security field office is closed. Every Social Security Office of Hearing Operations, the hearing offices are closed in the sense that we can't walk in there. So the only way to get in touch with folks right now is to call, or if you're lucky enough to have a fax number, you can fax something in, or you can mail something in. And everybody at Social Security, if you're on this call, everybody at Disability Determination Services, cover your ears real quick, because I'm gonna say something bad about y'all. I was convinced prior to COVID that when I mailed something in, as a lawyer, when I mailed something into Social Security, it went into the trash. I cannot tell you how many times I know I've mailed things in and it just gets lost. And I'm not saying there's malice or anything like that. I'm just saying they are busy. These folks work hard. Their workload never goes down. Can you imagine working and working and working and your work always stays the same or continues to increase? That's what folks at Social Security are doing. So if you need to report your earnings, here's a couple things I want you to try to do, since you can't go by there and drop it off. If you're mailing something in, I want you to keep a copy of whatever you mail in. That's very important. If you're mailing a pay stub, don't mail your actual pay stub to Social Security. You keep the original, or you keep a copy, but make sure you have to be organized on everything that you're doing with Social Security. You have to tell them, hey, I've sent this in on this date. I have another copy here. I can send it to you again. My preference right now with Social Security is try to fax documentation in, because you at least get some sort of fax confirmation. If you can, try to do that. Please, please, please. I'm already kind of running behind on my little schedule, but we're going to cover a few topics. We're still doing questions, I promise, but we're going to cover a few more important topics. Now, this is for Title II disability recipients, right? So this is where I'm kind of dividing folks. So not everybody this is going to apply to, but folks who have paid into the system, who've been approved for disability, who's getting their $1,200 a month or whatever their check is. There is something called a trial work period. A trial work period allows you to test your ability to go out and work. And the way it works, and this is confusing, and I was hesitant to really get into the ins and outs of it, but just bear with me. You don't have to understand it fully, but just bear with me here. The trial work period lasts for about 9 months. It lasts for 9 months, not consecutive. You can try to work for 1 month, and then the next month you have no income, and then the third month you're back at a different job or the same job. The trial work period is a period of time where over the course of 9 months, you can work and you can have income. If you make more than for 2021, it's $940. If you make more than $940 in that month, it triggers your trial work period. Social Security does not hold that against you for those months. So if you go out and let's say I'm getting $1,200 a month in Social Security disability benefits, I go out and make $1,000 in September of 2021, that is a trial work period month for me. That's one of my months. Okay, that's one. So over the course of 5 years from your first trial work period month, you can work 9 months without them holding it against you. Okay. After your 9 months expire, after your trial work period expires, you have 36 months consecutively where you can work and still get Social Security disability benefits as long as they are not at that SGA level. That's that $1,300.10. That's a very important number. You still can't go over that. There's other rules, and I really wish that I could kind of hit them, but I will say the one thing I want to point out is if you do your trial work period, you do your 9 months, and you get beyond that, and you have a month where you do make some good money, you make more than that $1,310, you can actually ask, they will cut you off for that month. For that month, you earn $1,310. But if the next month you're back down to zero, you can actually get reinstated. You don't have to go reapply. The months you're working and earning more than the allowable amount, you might not get any benefits, but you don't have to go reapply. You're not kicked off the program, so to speak. We're talking about this $1,310, and we keep going back to it. That's the magic number that Social Security uses. And remember, Tadra, Martin, and I said that was the general rule. So here's a big catch, and this is a very, very broad topic that can't be covered in this amount of time. But there is a theory called, or a thing called income-related work expenses. Income-related work expenses. And honestly, it sounds kind of what it is. So this applies to everybody. Title 16 SSI, Title II disability. If you have expenses that are directly related to you going out and working, that are directly enabling you to go out and work your part-time job or your whatever, any kind of work, you can deduct the cost of these work expenses. Now it's Social Security is going to really look at this. They're going to really scrutinize this, because what we're doing here is this is allowing us to make more money. So, and we're going to do a math problem here in a second. I know y'all are excited about that, but hold on to that thought just for a minute. Hey, income-related work expense. It can be medical supplies, medical devices. I've seen it, service animals. I've got a lot of folks who need supplies for type 2 diabetes, syringes, things like that, bandages. Any of these sorts of things can qualify as an income-related work expense. Transportation, out-of-pocket expenses for transportation, modifications to your home, modifications to your car, anything that you have spent out of your pocket can be a income-related work expense. And what it serves to do is it knocks down your earnings in a sense. So if you're up above that $1,300 in work, but you can show that you have income-related work expenses, maybe it can get you down below that number. On top of things, it's a way of maximizing your SSI or your disability each month. You have to stay organized. You have to report it. You have to have receipts for this stuff. If you buy a wheelchair from the flea market for $80 cash, you ain't gonna get an income related work expense, unfortunately. You have to be able to document what you are spending this money on. It's a pretty broad, well, as a lawyer, my argument is it's a pretty broad way of kind of saving money. And we're going to do this example real quick, so kind of bear with me. Let's say that Miss Martin earns, let's say $1,520 in earnings. Social Security, you don't have to remember these numbers, but they will knock off the first $20 of your earnings for no reason at all. That's just their policy. So we're taking $1,520 in earnings and we're knocking off 20. So it totters down to $1,500. Because you're working, Social Security will also allow you $65 exclusion. It's called a work exclusion. So we're slowly working our way down. So your $1,500 minus 65 is now $1,435. Okay, you're still up above SGA. You're still working. You're still making good money. Let's take a look and see if maybe Miss Martin has any income related work expenses. And I'm gonna give you a few examples. Let's say, and I'm pulling a lot of this stuff right off Social Security's website, just so you know, let's say she has $100 in union dues. Let's say her health insurance costs $150 each month. So $100 in union dues, $150 in health insurance, and then she has to pay $400 in transportation, special transportation expenses. All right, $100 union dues, man, $150 health insurance, $400 in special transportation. You add that up, it's $650. But it was kind of a trick. Union dues have nothing to do with income related work expenses. You can't deduct that. Unfortunately, you cannot deduct your health premiums, what you pay each month. You cannot deduct that. So the only thing that Miss Martin is able to deduct of the three is the $400 in transportation services that she pays to get her to and from her job. So if you look at what's happened, well, I think we were at $1,435. We're going to take off $400. So now we're down to $1,035 in earnings. Now, Social Security is going to ding Tadra for that. That's not a dollar for dollar based on that amount. What they do, typically, general rule, is they take whatever that final amount is after income related work expenses, they divide it in half. And that's your countable earnings. So I don't have my calculator, but if I take $1,035 and I divide it in half, they're going to basically say, all right, Miss Martin, we know you are making a little bit over $550 in countable earnings. And that's okay. We can live with that. We can get Social Security disability benefits, even in my scenario where Miss Martin was working and making $1,520 a month. If you don't have income related work expenses, it can get a little dicey. Goes back to my original point, always document, always save, always stay organized. You have to be almost OCD when it comes to this. You have to be proactive when it comes to Social Security and working and getting disability. You have to stay on top of everything. A couple real specific examples related before we go to the next topic. Routine drugs are not income-related work expenses. The drug has to be specific to your disabling condition. But my argument is that that's a lot. That's a lot, right? If I need to take my metformin to keep my diabetes at a certain level, then that's specific to my disabling condition. Co-pays are an income-related work expense. So while your monthly premium is not, your co-pays are. The last catch is we're talking about this on a month-to-month basis. So it may be that you're reporting things to Social Security every month. It may be that your check from Social Security Disability is going up and down every month. These are deductible in the month that you pay them, not in the month that you incur them. Tadra, I'm gonna try to squeeze one more thing in, and then we'll see kind of where we're at. And I'm sorry, because I know I'm talking fast. I want to talk about SSI, Title 16. Part-time work, self-employment, okay? And that's gig economy, art, self-employment stuff versus unearned income. And this is going to get a little bit outside of my realm because there's a tax issue that's kind of couched in this. But when you're talking about part-time work versus self-employment versus unearned income, part-time's easy, right? You're getting paid. There's some sort of W-2. It's kind of easy to deal with when you're an employee. Now, if you're self-employed, that involves, you can't just say I'm self-employed. Self-employed is an actual like tax status. You have to be filing what's called a Schedule C on your federal tax returns. And you can deduct your business expenses and do things on a tax standpoint that qualifies you to be self-employed. When you're self-employed for Social Security Disability, everything that we talked about just a little while ago, where you get the $20 deduction, you get the $65 deduction, then you get all these income-related work expenses, and then they kind of look at 1/2 of whatever that number ends up being. You get a lot of breaks if you're working as an employee. You get a lot of breaks if you're working as a self-employed individual. Same deductions, same income-related work expenses. Everything we've talked about is the same for employees as it is for the self-employed. Here's the catch. If you're not doing that on your tax stuff, you can't just say I'm self-employed. That money is counted as unearned income, okay? If Tadra sells her piece of artwork for $200 and she doesn't do the things that need to be done on the tax basis, she's not self-employed, that $200, the month she receives it, is counted as unearned income. Here's the catch. With unearned income, you do not get income-related work expenses. So a little one probably ain't the end of the world. But if you have unearned income one month of $1,500, you don't get to start saying, oh, well, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to transportation, medications, my wheelchair. None of that matters if it's unearned income. So you have to make sure, I'm not a tax professional, but you have to make sure that you are staying organized and that you are legitimately self-employed. Awards, if you're painting, Tadra makes the most beautiful painting, makes men weep when they see this painting, and she gets an award. That award is countable as unearned income the month that she receives it. Okay, so keep that in mind. Unearned income will cause a bigger reduction to your benefits. Let me say that again. Unearned income will cause a bigger reduction to your monthly benefits. The last two, Ms. Martin, I'm going to kind of lump together. There is two programs that I wanted to talk about, but I don't think we really have the time to cover them, but I just want to say their names. One of them is called PASS, P-A-S-S. It is available to everyone getting disability and SSI benefits. This is particularly for folks getting SSI benefits. PASS is a written plan that you do with Social Security. You actually reach out to Social Security, say, hey, I want to go back to work. I want to go do this. This is my goal. This is my job. This is what I want to do. They will work with you. They will set up a program. They will approve your PASS program, P-A-S-S. And what happens and what that means is any money you spend on education, training, transportation, childcare, any money you spend towards achieving your goal of going back to work is not counted. Okay, and that's a very small number. It's not going to apply to a ton of people, but when it does apply, and when you do it correctly, and you're proactive in reaching out to Social Security and say, I want to participate in the PASS program, I mean, it can change folks' lives because you can get these benefits. You can still spend money on your, like I said, your education, your training, childcare, all those sorts of things, and not have to worry about getting kicked off of your benefits. Social Security employs PASS specialists. Those are folks that all they do is help folks design a PASS program. The last thing, similar to the PASS program, is called the Ticket to Work program. It is another Social Security program. It is another program where you have to affirmatively or proactively reach out and touch base with Social Security to set up your ticket to work. Then you coordinate with state or local employment networks or vocational rehabilitation. You get training, you get education. They help find and sometimes even maintain employment, career counseling, job placement, job support, job services. And the big catch here is if you are participating in a Ticket to Work program, you cannot and will not be reviewed. Your disability eligibility will not be reviewed during that period of time. And that's one of the last points I want to point out. After you're approved for disability, everybody gets reviewed. You know, that's just how it is. It used to be probably every 2-3 years. It's ebbed and flowed a little bit, but on average, somewhere around every 2 or 3 years, whether you're working or not, Social Security will reach out to you and say, hey, we're reviewing your disability. Give us this information. And if you do that, you don't need a lawyer, you don't need me. If you respond and say, here's my doctors, no, I'm not back at work, no, nothing's better, I'm not having improved miraculously, they're going to continue your benefits. But what happens is so many folks get that piece of paper and ignore it. The letter comes to them and they say, hey, we're reviewing you. And Tyler Martin balls it up and throws it in the trash. If you don't respond, you're getting kicked off. You're getting kicked off. And then you're going to have to come and find me to try to fix it. And reacting to Social Security decisions is not as easy as being proactive. If you keep them in the loop, if you document, if you reach out to them, if you tell them what you're doing, they'll work with you. Okay, it's not going to be easy. There'll be times where you're frustrated and you're going to say, why am I doing this? But I promise you, if you have to react to them saying, hey, we're cutting you off, that's a nightmare. If that happens, you do have options. If you were ever kicked off the program for working or for earnings, If you ever issued an overpayment, sometimes what happens is Social Security will say, hey, why didn't you tell us you've been working the past 2 years? And you'll say, what do you mean? I've been faxing my pay stub into your office every month for the past 2 years. Social Security will say, well, no, we don't think so. So you've been overpaid. Give us back every penny that we've given you for the past 2 years. Oh, and by the way, we're going to go ahead and cut you off as well. That's what you're facing if you don't stay on top of things. I'm not trying to scare you. The theme of this is you can work and have some income and still get disability benefits, but you have to do it the right way. It shouldn't be this difficult, but it is. And they hold you to a standard. And if you're on top of it, it will be okay. But if you just think you can work, I'll give you one last example. I know for a fact I got clients right now. My office is right through that door that they're working. They're working under the table. They're working here. They're working there. And let me give you a couple of hypotheticals. They're not telling Social Security about this. Let me give you 2 hypotheticals. I call Social Security and I say, Todd or Martin is getting disability benefits. She lives down the street from me, and I see her out there every week mowing her yard. And then she gets out her fancy backpack leaf blower and she just blows all those leaves. And then she goes and she works in her tomato garden, and she does this every week, and it takes her 8 hours. I don't think she's disabled. There's no way she should do that and still get disability. Social Security will politely hang up on that person. They get calls like that all the time. Usually it's from family members, neighbors, cousins. I had a grandmother that did it to her grandson. They don't care about that because they know that that's not worth their time, nor is it probably even factual. You can't look at somebody and tell if they're disabled, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. Same set of facts, different scenario. If I call, still me, still Tadra, still doing the yard work, but I say, I've been paying Tadra $400 a month to come to do my yard and to make it look as pretty as her yard, that's when their ears perk up. They take those calls very serious. And there's a saying, it's been around for a while, it's when the grass is cut, the snakes will show, right? So what I mean by that is, it's always somebody close to you. It's always somebody who you had a falling out with. It's always a family member. It's always somebody who you feel comfortable with, even the employer himself, right? You have a falling out with your employer, the employer's mad, they're going to call Social Security and they're going to say Todd or Martin was working here. I just want y'all to know that. It's petty. It's extremely petty. It's none of their business, but it happens all the time. So if you think your part-time job, your under the table job, your gig work, if you think you don't need to report that, I would just caution you, you never know. You never know. All right, Todder, I think that's all I have to say about that. I know I only left about 10 minutes for questions, but what you want to do?
We have a few questions, so I'll dive in. Our first question is wanting to know, where can people go to get help to fill out the initial SSI SSDI application? Does the Social Security Administration provide that assistance to initial applicants?
All right, good one. Remember, we're filming during COVID. So this is the rule right now. You can't go to the office. The way you apply for Social Security disability of any sort is you contact your local office. And if you can put into your Google machine, your computer, SSI office locator, SSA office locator, what is my local Social Security office? It will pop up and you call your local office specific. If you're in Winston, you call the one in Winston. If you're in Greensboro, you call the one in Greensboro. If you get out into the counties, don't assume that it's your closest one. Folks who live in High Point, unfortunately, a third of them go to Greensboro, so that's who they would have to call. A third of them come to Winston, That's who they would have to call. And then a third of them go to Salisbury. So if you go into the computer and do your SSA office locator, it says, what's your zip code? And you can put in 27103 and it'll say, this is your office. Here's the phone number. You call that number. And the way they're doing it right now is when you call, they will schedule a telephone application for you. They won't do it right then. So if you call this morning, they're not going to take your application on that call. What they'll do is they'll say, all right, we got you. We're going to call you back on Friday, 10 o'clock. The interview itself is pretty simple. And these folks are being very patient with all the claimants right now. So you will do it over the phone. Please do not try to do it on the computer. Please, 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 because something's going to get messed up. When you're doing it over the phone, you at least have a Social Security specialist who can hold your hand and take your information. And what I tell folks, at that point, if you want, you can reach out to a lawyer, or you can wait and see, right? You can wait and see, because you might get an approval. You might get approved for your disability. And if you do, maybe you don't need a lawyer. It's all what you want to do. So if you want to reach out to me or somebody on a billboard or some handsome person in a commercial, you can do that. But you got to get the application started over the telephone.
Also, we can't, just so people know, if you have specific questions concerning any matter shared in this presentation or need legal advice, we encourage you to consult with an attorney. With that being said, I'm gonna we got a couple of questions kind of centering on the same thing. So I'm gonna try to do it in a general way, is that we have some parents who children who happen to be adults are receiving SSI, and they wanna know about the deductions, the handling requirements, because they've received some different information from Social Security themselves, from different parents in the same situation. So they just wanted to know where's the best resource to get information about how these things may affect their children's or adult children Social Security benefits.
I'm with you, and I'm probably not going to get to the crux of the matter, but the couple issues. I mean, first and foremost, you can go to the Social Security website and find general rules. The one that I really like, they do it every year. They call it like SSI updates or something like that. But if you have a living arrangement and you have somebody who is paying their fair share of the rent, benefits should not be reduced at all. Okay, so my example earlier in this presentation was if I'm sleeping on my sister's couch and I'm not paying rent, they're going to ding me 1/3. That's just how it is. So my $800 and something check is going to be $500 and something. If I'm paying my fair share, then I'm good. I still get my fair share. So what I've seen in these agreements, these kind of living agreements, where I will see a family member, a mom, a grandma, a brother, sister, write something up that says so-and-so is going to live with me, but he is paying his fair share. If our bills are $1,200 a month and there's 4 of us living in this house, we'll each kick in $300. That's his fair share. Now, do we know for sure that little Johnny is paying his sister that $300? No. But if you have documentation to show that there's an agreement in place, a lot of times that's all Social Security needs. You cannot do it backwards. You can't write something now that says, oh, by the way, he's been living with me since 2018, and this has been our agreement the whole time. That's not how it works. If you do something now, you can do it moving forward. I know that doesn't get into all of it, and I think a couple folks in the chat kind of popped up with some suggestions, very helpful suggestions as well.
Yeah, I think some people said you can reach out to WIPA, which is the work incentive. I don't know what the PA stands for, but I'm sorry, but they can reach out to WIPA. Also, we have a quick question. Can an individual on Title II work up to $940 a month without benefits being reduced?
I still want you to report them. I mean, the answer is maybe, right? Maybe. But I still want you to keep your pay stubs or keep a ledger or otherwise communicate with Social Security about that. Yeah, but you're not getting to that SGA level. You're not triggering what's called the trial work period. So if you're really at a very low level, still tell Social Security about it, still talk to them about it. But typically, the lower the level, the more likely you are to not have any benefits be reduced.
Right. And so WIPA is Work Incentives Planning and Assistance. And speaking of which, I think one of our last questions wants to know, they have clients who say the judge or a lawyer said that they can make this much, which is different from the rules that they follow in WIPA. Is there any situation where an agreement is reached in court contrary to the SSA's work incentives?
No, unfortunately, no. I mean, Social Security is going to take the position like these are our rules. So, and I have to follow it as a Social Security lawyer. Now, I realize there are other programs out there and other, considerations, but looking at it from just a Social Security standpoint, you can't contract your way around that.
Also, we ask that please complete our short feedback survey. Let us know how we did and what else you would like to have us present on. I think there's the link in the chat. That is, I don't think we have any more questions that I see. So therefore, if there are no more questions, we are right at 12 on the dot. So thank you all for coming. We're so glad that so many of you participated and were interested in this. And again, if you have any feedback for us, or if you have any other ideas for topics or presentations, webinars, workshops you would like us to do, please let us know.